Everyone, for letting me jump in at the last minute. I really appreciate you. When I watch my fellow Toastmasters, you all make speaking look so easy. And today is a really good example of that. Some of you get up there and you just give these effortless speeches. And I hear this too about my speaking. People will tell me, wow, that looks so, the exact word is effortless. And I just want to put my hands in my hair and say, oh my gosh, because we all know there's no such thing as an effortless speech. Gabriel, this is my speech, be quiet. He's such a, so I wanted to reveal, kind of lift the lid on the mess behind the magic. Italians have a word for making something look effortless. And I love this word. It's called sprezzatura. And it's making something look effortless. There is one thing that is effortless for me. And it's sometimes I get an idea about a speech and the outline comes easily to me. And for some people, you might call this being in flow. You might call this call it enthusiasm. And enthusiasm means being filled with spirit. You might call it inspired, whatever word you want to call it. It just comes, that part comes easily to me. After that, as Elizabeth Gilbert says, I sit down and I work like a farmer. I type up the ideas. And the reason I type them up is so that I can move the ideas around. I have a lectern that I sit on my desk and I give the speech. So I give the speech, which means my window's open and I'm talking and I'm pointing and I'm pausing. And if it doesn't work, then because it's on computer, I move it around and I give the speech again. So for a Toastmaster speech, I give it over and over. If the speech has to be memorized, I've probably given that speech 8 times by the time I've given it to Toastmasters. If the speech has to be memorized by the time I've cut and pasted and moved it around and gotten it to its final form, I walk it out. So this means my neighbors get the treat of watching me walk in my neighborhood talking, pointing, or I don't point, but I probably do point, but I'm talking, thinking, pausing. So I walk around my neighborhood speaking the speech out loud. And somebody in Toastmasters told me that they do that same thing. Do you want to wave and tell who you are? I don't want to tell who it is, but somebody told me that they do the same thing. They walk their speech out with their body. Somebody else told me yes, Chantel told me she does the same thing. Yeah. Does anybody else do that? Do you walk your speech out? Okay, Elizabeth does it. I can't see everybody in the room, but Elizabeth does it. Okay, so you walk your speech so that you can memorize it with your body. Okay. So it's not an effortless process. I once gave a speech that was an hour long, and Julie was so kind to show up for that speech. I gave that speech in 15-minute segments to make sure all the segments were working. That means I gave that speech over 5 times, so over 5 hours for a 1-hour speech that I gave over and over to make sure it flowed correctly. Recently, I gave a 5-minute speech, but it involved a flowing PowerPoint behind me. And PowerPoint is not my thing. I gave it to my son first, so he could help me with the PowerPoint. I gave it to him 3 times. And then Greg was so kind to help me. And Greg, I think we did it, 3 times, Greg? Did we went through it 3 times? And Greg said something I've never heard before, but because I was dealing with the PowerPoint, and Greg said, listen to this one, guys. He said, you are not connecting with the audience. I was like, oh, dagger to the heart, right? That's like the worst thing ever to hear. You're not connecting with the audience, because I'm fighting with the PowerPoint. So that's horrible. I mean, it's great feedback, but horrible feedback. So I had to rework it. And then I gave it to, after I reworked it to better connect with the audience, I gave it the same speech to a friend 8 more times. Yep, a 5-minute speech. Then I finally give the speech for real. And then someone comes up to me at the end and says, your speech was so effortless. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So this is to say, we all have our process about how we give an effortless speech. And I feel like when I hear that word and I see all of us, it's sprezzatura, right? We're making it look effortless, but we all have our process. I start in the middle of the speech, of the outline. I write the conclusion. I write the introduction. I make it all match to make sure the conclusion and the introduction match. I make sure that there's nothing in there that shouldn't be in there. The topic sentence, all of it. It's a lot of work to make sure it all fits together. And I feel like when I hear that word effortless speech, that it's like this beautiful woman, not me, because I'm always like barely put together, but that has all this makeup and she has rollers in the sink and she has a brush and like everything is left behind and she comes out, she's all elegant, but meanwhile her bathroom is a disaster. That's like the picture I have. She's like in this evening gown, right? But that's not the reality for any of us. We've worked really hard at our craft. So that's the mess behind the magic on my end. And I would love to hear the mess behind the magic on your end. Sprezzatura. Thank you for letting me jump in at the last minute, Mr. Toastmaster.